Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Youth Awareness Week special episode for our Youth Empowerment Radio. My name is Katie, and I'm a summer associate with Youth Move Colorado. Our topic today revolves around the social impacts of psychosis. Today, I have Dr. Schiffman from the University of California, Irvine, joining me. He's also my former professor and principal investigator for my research lab I was a part of. Dr. Schiffman is a clinical psychology principal investigator of research in the Psychosis Risk Early Intervention, Evaluation, and Treatment Lab, also known as the Prevent Lab. He focuses on engaging people who might be at clinical high risk for psychosis. So I want to start out with, hi. Nice to see you today.
Nice to see you too. I'm so happy to be able to spend some time catching up. So
Yeah.
you and I have been friends for several years now.
Yeah.
It
I
was
think
great to
I reached out to you when you first moved from Maryland, from the Youth First Lab to UC Irvine. I was just interested in your research, and I have lived experience and some loved ones who I feel like I resonated with what you research. And so I was really excited to get to know you. And I'm glad that I was able to take your psychosis class and join the Prevent Lab for a bit. So.
For sure. In fact, when I moved in 2020, I think you were one of the very first undergrads who I had a real
Oh,
authentic connection with. And
wow.
it
That's
was really
great.
important. Yeah, you were like an ambassador for me to Southern California. So I'll always be grateful
Wow.
for you for that. And
That's awesome.
having you in class was exceptional. I know that legally I'm not supposed to talk about the how good of a student you were, but suffice it to say you were an exceptional student. And
Thank
that was
you.
really cool too. And then in addition to your work in the research lab where you contributed a lot, not just to the work, but to the generation of new ideas, you also helped out with the nonprofit that I helped co-found, Thrive Together
Oh,
OC.
yeah. Yeah, I
So
remember.
in fact, you're still a big part of the heart and soul of that. Some of the
Oh,
promotional work that
thanks.
you did and the ideas that you provided to guide it in the right direction
I'm
really
glad to hear.
had some staying power. So
Hmm.
always happy to have a chance to reconnect with you.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. That's really good to hear. So yeah, I had a really good time at UC Irvine, and yeah, so I wanted to interview you. I wanted to give some context about Youth Move Colorado in general. So I would say its primary purpose is to serve and support young people who have lived experience in youth serving systems of care, including, but not limited to, mental health, being unhoused, domestic violence victims, juvenile justice, and foster care. Mental Health America, I think they're a nonprofit organization, released a study called The State of Mental Health in America for 2025. And they rank states by various factors like mental health, substance use issues, insurance covering mental health and substance use, and mental health care accessibility. I was looking through the paper and I noticed Colorado was ranked as having a much higher prevalence of mental illness and substance use than California. Given that Colorado is ranked lower in terms of quality of like mental health in the state in general, and you've been working in California for several years, and also Maryland, if this applies, what are some lessons that Colorado can learn from California? Like what types of systems are in place that California and maybe Maryland have that can prevent young people from slipping through the cracks?
Yeah, Katie, I mean, excellent question, right? I mean, thinking about how we can all learn from one another and areas of opportunities where different communities can borrow the ideas of other communities and,
Yeah.
the exchange of ideas and recognizing also sort of the unique backgrounds and the unique communities and the unique cultures that sort of surround different areas of the country and the world. So it's so
Yeah.
important. I was thinking when you were referencing that study, I just wanted to put in a plug for Mental Health America. They are a
Mm,
fantastic organization. I have several friends who work there. In fact, I was just in a meeting today with I believe at least a past president of Mental Health America, if not a founder of
wow.
Mental Health America. And like the imprint that Mental Health America has in the world is really, really pronounced
Mm,
and strong. One thing that I want to like put a particular like I don't know, I think I use this expression already, so I'm subconscious of it, but like a plug for Mental
mm,
Health America is their screening profile. So
mm.
the Mental Health America website has, I think, the most comprehensive and helpful like screening
No.
or battery of screening tools for people that want to assess their mental wellness or the mental health. Among other tools that they have in their arsenal includes one called the PQB, which is a tool
Mm,
that is useful for assessing some of the mental health concerns and challenges and experiences that we look at in my lab and in our nonprofit. So anyway, in fact,
wow.
every assessment that we do in the context of Thrive Together OC, which is the name of our nonprofit, or TTOC for short,
Mm.
we pretty much recommend that people take a look at the Mental Health America website because it's great.
Yeah. Wow. That's really good to know. PQB. I'll have to look that up. What does PQB stand for?
Well, it stands
Yeah.
for the Prodromal Questionnaire Brief.
Mm,
So, but basically, it's a measure of experiences on the psychosis continuum.
mm,
So it looks at, a range of experiences. Some of them more, if they're more extreme, they become symptoms. If they're distressing or impairing
mm,
or perhaps even just captivating, then they might interfere with, a person's ability to do well in school or thrive
mm.
in their job or whatever, and then they become symptoms. But for some folks, many
Yeah.
folks actually, they're just experiences,
Mm,
like the experience of deja vu, or maybe like hearing your name being called and no one's around, or
yeah.
maybe like you're thinking your cell phone's ringing, but it's not.
Mm,
Seeing something out of the corner of your eye and thinking maybe it's a person or something like that. A lot of these
yeah.
experiences are very common and not psychopathology or not a symptom. They're just experiences, or perhaps sometimes I refer to them as extraordinary experiences. But if they don't get in the way and
Mm,
they don't bother you, then they're quite common. And
yeah.
actually, I think it's useful to think about all experiences, especially on this continuum, as on a
Mm,
continuum, because it reduces the stigma as we recognize that, you know, like we all can relate to each other in many different ways, and we're all far more similar than we are different. Which
yeah.
is actually sort of a nice segue back into your question about like California and Maryland and Colorado. I'll
Mm,
say one shining star that I know in Colorado is actually, I believe, at Colorado University. Her name is Michelle West. And
ah.
Dr. West and her colleagues have pioneered a sort of a support system for people that might have some symptoms related to mental health concerns who also want to and like sort
Mm,
of pursue and like, strive towards their highest levels in terms of educational success. So her program it's called Invest, and it provides young people with mental health concerns a coach who helps like
wow.
them thrive in school, just like
Yes.
you thrived when you were at
Yeah.
UC Irvine.
Yeah, you
So,
said she works at the University of Colorado. Is that
oh
Denver? Boom.
yeah, Colorado University. Forgive me for if I pronounce this wrong, but Anschutz.
I think it's a German word, so I say Anschutz, but a lot of people anglicize it and say Anschutz. So
Ah,
either one.
okay, all right. Well, mine was somewhere in between, I think. But
Yeah.
yes, she works in Anschutz
Yeah,
or
that's where I'm
Anschutz.
gonna go to grad school.
I know.
So-
I'm very proud of you. Yeah,
wow, I should get
it's
in
pretty awesome.
contact with her.
Yeah, in fact, I
So
definitely want to introduce you to her.
awesome. Yeah. So I was thinking a little bit about how you said that distress and impairment are crucial for having a diagnosis of something. I've noticed like online, a lot of people might take some symptoms of whatever mental health condition and be I guess I've heard the term med school syndrome where you learn about something and you feel like you have a lot of different disorders, but what like what would you say to someone who maybe sees a lot of symptoms of mental health conditions online and maybe thinks like, oh, do I have all of these? Like, how do you tell the difference? Like when, I don't know, when would you say is a good time to maybe ask their doctor about it or therapist or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a hard thing to know, right?
Yeah.
Because we only are inside our own minds, and if we don't really check in with
Yeah.
somebody else, how will we know what's typical and what's,
Mm.
atypical? That's a pretty profound question, I think.
Uh,
I think for my first answer to that is to sort of like err on the side of caution. Like if
mm,
you're feeling distress or, there's been a downturn in the way in which you're addressing, or managing things around you, or if the world around you is treating you in ways that are bringing you down, which is oftentimes the case
mm,
when, as the sort of the cause of mental health concerns, then yeah, reach out.
mm,
One like, there's different layers, right? And I recognize that, different people have different, I guess, opportunities for access to
mm,
care. But one like sort of low cost, easy touch access is publicly available through the Mental Health America website. So I know that this is
oh,
supposed to be a
okay.
commercial for Mental Health America, but like that, when we're talking about screening, that's all like sort of, individualized, right? So
Yeah.
if you like are in your room and you're like sort of wondering if, there's some mental health concerns that might be, you know, relevant and worthy of further attention,
Mm,
then that's a place to start. But I also love the idea of consulting your doctor. More and
mhm,
more primary care physicians are like embedding mental health screening
mm,
into their practice and their normal way of their normal routines. If you're still in school, schools are a great place to check in to
mm,
see how you're doing or to see if you might benefit from additional care or services. So whether it's whatever K through 12 and you may have a school counselor or someone on staff who specializes in mental health, stop
yeah.
by, just check in with them. Or if you're in college, most colleges have counseling centers that are free and you know easily accessible on campus.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they offer Zoom appointments too. So really convenient and just kind of like you would go for like a wellness visit for
Mhm.
physical health. Mental
Yeah,
health
that
is
makes
no different.
sense. I think you might have said something about like when people maybe start to treat you differently. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's exactly what you said, but that just reminded me of so I saw online a video of someone kind of making a joke about I forget exactly the context, but saying that they like their disability itself might not impair them as much as like how other people treat them, like the social stigma and stuff. And I thought that was like, even though it was like in a joking scenario, I thought that was a really good point because I feel like everyone is so neurodiverse and I read a headline recently that apparently worldwide mental health issues are the leading cause of disability. I think it said like 1 in 7. I would have to check that again to make sure that it's true, but I don't know. I think there's like such value in different dispositions, and there's a reason that we all have like we're born like with different temperaments and stuff because we need all that. It's survived through evolution, I think, because we need a lot of diversity to work together as a social species. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that because, yeah, I think not everything has to be like always framed as, I guess, a disability. And while, like, definitely if something is like distressing or impairing work or school or social relationships, like, it's important to seek help to feel better. But, like, just because we might like think differently or things like that doesn't mean that we're lesser. It just means
Oh,
unique, I
yeah.
guess. I feel
I mean,
like.
that for sure. I couldn't agree with you more on that last point, Katie. I mean, I really feel like diversity of ideas is what makes us great. And,
Yeah.
diversity of ideas comes from a diverse set of backgrounds and diverse set of biological attributes. And,
Yeah.
and it's amazing to see sort of like,
Mm.
a rich and varied tapestry of like human connection. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I
Yeah.
think, you began that sort of like, your thoughts there, contemplating this idea of the stigma associated with, potential label or a concern
Mm.
or whatever, and the actual experiences of the concerns themselves. And, and sometimes you can kind of get a double whammy,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe the experiences like are troubling or interfere with your ability to lead a life of your choosing, or do well in school, or flourish in your job. But then on top of that, if people are judging you for it, then it makes it even harder. And then I can then see sort of like this negative cycle that you're sort of alluding to, that leads
Mm.
to what you're talking about with this, with those studies suggesting
Yeah.
disability is increased because of, as a result of these things.
Yeah. It
Um,
can be a vicious cycle, I
a
feel.
vicious cycle, yeah, yeah. But there's another thing that, well, I mean, I'll just say actually before I like share one thought about this is like,
Mm.
you know, the when you think about like diverse ideas and backgrounds and
Mm.
biological predispositions, like the society is kind of like set up in a way that like it's not like an even playing field.
Mm.
So some people who like
Yeah.
if society were like restructured a little bit, they would be flourishing, but instead like they're sort of confronted with a world that doesn't always see them and doesn't always appreciate what they have to
Yeah.
offer. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them, in my humble opinion. It just means that there's something wrong with the world that's surrounding all of us. And in particular,
Yeah.
it has implications for those that it's not serving appropriately. So
Yeah.
I think that's something to keep in mind, when we're thinking about like, like, okay, well, I might have a mental health concern, but if the world were organized in a different
Yeah.
way, you know, you may not have, or a person may not have a mental health concern. It's not about them
Mm.
necessarily, it's oftentimes a reflection of them sort of struggling with a
Yeah.
world that's sort of organized in ways that aren't always adaptive for people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that reminds me of a lyric from a pop artist that I like. Her name is
Hmm.
Madison Beer. She has
Oh,
a
I love
song.
Madison.
Oh, you know of her? Okay.
I don't know her
Awesome.
personally, but
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, her album Life Support is very like, I think, mental health related, but she has a song called Stay Numb and Carry On. And one of the lyrics is, "The world is mad, but they say I'm the crazy one." And I
Yes.
love that.
Yes,
So,
that's exactly right. I mean that's and what's cool about that lyric and her ability to express that is that it like shines a light on that, and it like it allows her
mm,
awareness for her own self-expression to
mhm,
free her from this idea that there's
mm,
something wrong with her, and maybe allow her to ask herself not what's wrong with me, but what's happened to me. And
yeah,
what's so beautiful and powerful about her and other artists are that we can all, enjoy and benefit from
Mhm.
their genius. Like
Yeah.
that line resonates with you, and it like allowed you to have additional insight and think about the world in a different way, which is
Yeah.
so cool. I mean, I think, both my kids are, and my wife actually are like, all of them are exceptional musicians and
Oh,
songwriters, and that like artistic expression is such a gift that,
yeah.
that they have internally, and then they can share with others, not just my kids and family, but like, all artists in their own ways. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we, I'm glad you brought that line up. That's a really cool line.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of like alchemy or whatever in a way. It's like, well, the interest in alchemy originally like inspired people to come up with chemistry, but it's just kind of turning, that's a side tangent. I don't know why I said that. But it kind of turns pain and suffering and struggle into like gold, something that people can relate to, and it's like cathartic to listen to this music, and it's really like inspiring when people who have such a large platform are like willing to be vulnerable about struggling, and it takes a lot of bravery. So, yeah, I like artists
yeah,
like her and others.
that's true.
So, I guess
Yeah.
that
Oh,
can get me to the next point about stigma. So, I'd say you're pretty much a leader in preventative mental health care, identifying and helping those at clinical high risk for psychosis. You often talk about the negative impacts of stigma. What are some correlates of mental health stigma, and how can we work to decrease the barrier it has on individuals seeking mental health treatment?
yes. It's funny because like the last part of what you said, how can we decrease the barriers it has on individuals seeking mental health treatment, is really like, to me, like what I think of as the primary challenge or
Mm,
problem associated with stigma. That like,
yeah,
people are afraid to come forth or to share vulnerability, or, you know, not not self-disclose. And just as a side note, I work on early risk signs for psychosis, and psychosis
mm,
is sometimes defined as a challenge that a person might have as a result of disturbances in the way in which they perceive the world, or but that make it hard for them to distinguish what's real and what's not real.
yeah,
And and then you see like some like hallmark concerns that, sort of, I guess, emerge as a result of having a hard time distinguishing between what's real and what's not, as like perhaps hearing voices or hallucinations, or having unusual thoughts or ideas that you hold on to tenaciously despite evidence to the contrary. And the term for that is
mm,
is are delusions.
yeah,
But some people who have some of those experiences, they are actually in mental health care services,
mm,
but they don't bring that up to their provider because they're so
mm,
stigmatized
yeah,
about like that subset of mental health concerns. So in my like sort of subfield within mental health, like there's extra stigma, and that's why I think it's particularly important in my little domain. But it's important across the gamut. Mental health concerns are stigmatized. People feel threatened and vulnerable if they bring things up, and maybe people are going to judge them.
yeah,
I think the main concern that I have is like it's preventing people from getting the help that they may benefit from, to allow them to flourish and lead a life of their choosing, a life in the community, a life that they want to live. But there's other correlates to stigma too, like shame and
yeah,
secrecy and social withdrawal and lower self-esteem, and just not, like you mentioned the word catharsism, or
yeah,
self-expression through your art.
yeah,
you know if you don't have a chance to express yourself or share with others, then the
mm,
challenges that you confront and that you face, if you face them alone or in isolation, oftentimes that increases the chances that your end result are deepened scars, as opposed to the
mm,
opportunity to use those challenges to maybe build muscle. And
yeah,
I'm really all about like helping people grow stronger and find meaning in
mm,
in any challenge that they might have, mental health or otherwise, but certainly within mental health. And
Yeah.
you mentioned that you have lived experience, and I have seen you firsthand like grow and flourish and give to others and find strength and meaning in your past experiences. And that's inspirational. And I think
Thank you.
that's what it's all about. So like, like getting back to like can we do to break down some of the stigma? I mean, I think brave people like yourself, I wish you didn't have to be brave to do this, right? Like, but you have to be
Yeah.
brave because of the society we live in, going back to
Yeah.
Addison Beard's line. But brave people standing up, sharing their story, normalizing, in your sharing of story through your lived experience, but just in general, like people, irrespective of their status related to mental health, just recognizing that mental health exists on a continuum and it goes up and
Hmm.
down, and most people have challenges. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Sorry.
yeah, no, no,
I
keep
think
going. Yeah.
like people can be their own worst enemy and have a lot of self-judgment and self-stigma and kind of sometimes reject themselves before taking a chance on something. There's like something called rejection therapy that's popular right now, but I don't know. I was thinking about this a while ago, and I think I posted to my social media account like just thinking of, if we're so self-critical, like, would we say that to a loved one? Like, why are we so harsh on ourselves if we would never dare to say that to someone we care about? Because
Oh, yeah.
it can be kind of hypocritical, because it's like if I hate some trait so much about myself, then what does that say about like how I'm judging other people who struggle with the same thing? Because we're more similar than alike, so similar than different. Yeah.
Yes. Katie, I love that. I mean, I love that mantra. We're all far more similar than we are different. And
Yeah.
I love what's underlying your comment there, which is like deep, authentic self-compassion.
Mm.
And that's something that I think, we all should give ourselves a double scoop of that.
Yeah.
Would we say this to, someone that we love? Or would we have these same thoughts about someone we love in those
Yeah.
ways? Oftentimes not. You got to give yourself grace and
Yeah.
and also give other people grace. I think
Yeah.
that's part of it. And I think, like circling back to these ideas, like what can we do about it to reduce stigma? I really feel like this, like, I mean, you're like sort of shining example of this, but like just like having people feel a sense of hope and optimism about their future, I think is really like that sort of like underlies a lot of like what I try to do, especially in terms of reducing stigma. But
Yeah.
there's like ways in which you can do that are pretty tangible. Like there's a lot of myths out there about mental health. People are like lazy or broken or crazy, or it's all their
Mm.
fault, or it's all, like there's nothing they can do about it, that they should be ostracized, or I don't want to have anything to do. All these, that they all have unstable housing, or that they're all violent, or anytime you say they
Yeah.
are all, you know,
Yeah.
you're off, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
miss. So reducing the stereotypes, breaking down some of the myths. I also think it's important to think about the language that we use. I mean, maybe
Mm.
this isn't
Yeah.
like the most important thing, but like sometimes it's just like a signal or a sign that you respect somebody for who they are as a person, and
Yeah.
don't just think about like what label they may be carrying first.
Mm.
We're all like unique individuals, like, and that's like a cool part of this whole thing, right? It's like a gift to be able to interact with somebody, as we were saying before, that has a
Mm.
diverse set of ideas or thinks about the world in a different way, because then, it leaves you with the opportunity to kind of see the world in a different way. And
Yeah.
it's so amazing. Like, so like we shouldn't be, it's like the opposite of stigma, right? I mean, and I think education
Hmm.
is really a part of that too. We have to teach people, that like that mental health concerns are addressable, and they don't indicate like a weakness or
Yeah.
a signal for threat or danger, and lots of other things that could be educate people about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you say about like kind of not generalizing, and it reminds me that like I think like our brains sometimes are kind of wired to try to reduce effort and thinking deeply about a lot of things so we can try to think like think of like things in patterns, and sometimes we make up patterns or stereotypes so that we don't have to expend as much effort, but a lot of times those can be wrong. And so even if we might have some implicit biases, it's like, I don't know, maybe metacognition could help thinking about our own thoughts and realizing that not every automatic thought has to be true. And yeah, it's kind of like that's kind of meta in itself, which is
It
like
is.
kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy for challenging psychosis delusions and stuff, like just reflecting on why we might automatically think things, or cognitive distortions like all or nothing thinking and stuff. So yeah, it's something that extends beyond delusions, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Right about that. Wait, Katie, I can't help but respond to some of that. First of all, exceptional knowledge of your cognitive behavioral therapy skills. So nice
Thanks.
job labeling some of those automatic thoughts. And I'm right there with you. I think, the stereotypes are should be challenged. And I think, a mantra, like this is maybe a meta mantra or just like a little skill to like that I think is useful for people to hold on to is is just to like ask, not
Yeah.
assume. Like, so this is my mantra, ask and don't assume. Because
Yeah.
if you assume, you're bound to be wrong. But or at least you're going to be wrong a lot.
Yeah.
But if you ask, then you get the answers. And then, I don't know if you ever watched this show, Ted Lasso.
I've heard of it,
You
but
heard
I
it?
haven't seen it.
I mean, he's just like this like upbeat, positive guy. But like, there's this one quote that I don't know. I don't know if it's like anybody else picked it up or if it's like recognizable or whatever. But like, I'm like big into this idea of curiosity, and when curiosity is applied to serving one another in a way that's
Mm.
non-judgmental, then it can go a long way in reducing stigma and increasing
Yeah.
our understanding of others and being able to, like been talking about this whole time, recognize the beauty and the gifts in the diversity of the human
Yeah.
experience.
I like
So
that a lot.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I heard somewhere like someone said like curiosity is kind of the antidote to anger, because anger is
Hmm.
like, I don't
Oh,
know,
I like
maybe
that.
we're assuming things and we are feeling defensive, but if we're curious and willing to open our minds to different perspectives, that can be kind of the antidote to
Oh my God, I love that.
judgment. So,
I have not heard that. I love it. Yes, it fits perfectly because what happens is when you're curious, then and you ask, open-ended, non-judgmental questions, you gain context. You understand where a person's coming
mm,
from. And as soon as you understand where a person's coming from or their background or their lived experience or the hurdles that they've had to jump over, then you understand them in a way that reduces your frustration and
yeah,
your attributions, like, oh, they're a bad person, but
yeah,
rather these are the things that happened to them. And
yeah.
and
Is
then
it
before
called
you know it,
fundamental attribution error,
that's
or
right.
is
That's
that
right.
something else?
Yeah,
I don't
that's right.
know.
Yeah. We always blame so that the fundamental attribution error is essentially, you can correct me if I get this wrong, but is
You
that
might have to correct me.
well, we think that everything that we do that might be not like less than ideal is because of the circumstances that surround us. But we
Mm,
think that like if somebody else does things that we don't like, we think it's about their quality, the quality of their character. There's something wrong with them. And
mm,
and that's in
oh,
neither case is really true. We're like, and we sometimes do things that we could do better, but we're also influenced by our surroundings. And the same is true for others. That's like a dialectic. Like we can like and love and give ourselves grace for where we're at, but then also strive for
mm,
self-improvement and growth. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
anyway,
I like that
cool.
a lot. So I guess I have like one last question for you. Given your extensive research on mental health among young people, what are some of the most important lessons that you'd like to share with our viewers who may or may not know much about the state of mental health in the US today? So,
Okay. All right. All right. I mean, I think the like lessons that I'd like to share. It's funny. I think about lessons I've learned. I mean,
mm,
and I'm also sort of feeling self-conscious about this because I think the
oh,
lesson that I've learned is that I should listen more. And
mm,
and I feel like maybe I've talked a lot today with you, but like I'm definitely
no,
listening and taking notes to what you're saying.
I'm learning a lot.
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning way more. And I mean, and I think that's probably something that's good. I don't know if that's like about the state of mental health in the US today, but it's about
Yeah,
the state of each other. And,
yeah,
I mean, one thing that I think is really true, Katie, is like human connection, it still matters, like
mhm,
our connections and how we find them make a difference. I think, my connection with you still resonates and gives me joy and strength and makes me
mhm,
feel like I'm more part of this world.
yeah,
And some of our research suggests this also. So I mean, it's common sense, but like, some of the best predictors of like positive outcomes for people, like, doing well in school and doing well in their job and, avoiding like crisis mental health services and stuff. The best predictors of this are social connection. And I think that's
mm,
something that, I mean, I think that
oh
everyone kind
yeah,
of knows at some level, but I really want to like, I would like to emphasize that, as a state of
yeah,
mental health in the US today.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of the study of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, childhood trauma, basically, I would say, and like how it was found that having just one adult you can trust and open up to significantly decreases the negative outcomes on people's mental health as they develop into adults. So,
Yes, 100%. I'm so glad you brought that up. You're such an excellent student of the literature. I mean, like as you know, I'm like a psychologist and, mental health professional or whatever. But like, I mean, I think there's way more power in, the connection that you have with a peer, friend, a loved one, way more power in the satisfaction that you might get in pursuing an interest or career, a job, or an
mhm.
academic endeavor than I mean, maybe I shouldn't compare them necessarily, like, but like I think it's all good, but I want to say like, like the those types of endeavors and connections with peers and friends
Mhm.
are profoundly powerful. And
Yeah.
we should cherish them and savor them. And I think, like that's probably like a very important lesson that I would want to share. And I mean, but other things are like related to that, and that like, you're not alone. Even if you feel alone, there's actually like there's people throughout the country, like thousands and thousands of people throughout the country who are staffing like crisis lines and warm lines
Mm,
and thousands of people who are peers or mental health professionals or just loved ones and family members or volunteers who care about other people. I mean, maybe they don't know you yet, but some
mhm.
of them you can have access to. You can call,
Yeah.
988 or, whatever the local crisis or, support lines are in your area. And and you can be reminded that, sometimes this world can feel lonely,
Mm,
but you're not alone. So I'd say
yeah.
that's part of it. And yeah, there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of strain and there's a lot of injustice
Hmm.
and there's a lot of a world that we've been describing that doesn't always fit everybody. And sometimes it feels like we as individuals in this world are like square pegs trying to be forced into a round hole. But
Yeah.
there's people out there who love us and also who's like, in the metaphor of what did I say, square peg? Like they also may be square pegs. And or there's a part of the board somewhere else that, that you might find as a good fit to be a part of.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
hope. And that's like the thing that I
Yeah.
want to share the most about
Yeah.
or
I love
emphasize.
that. I think that's a great point to end on. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that anyone watching can benefit from, I don't know, or resonate with anything that we said. So even if it just helps one person. Okay. Thank you so much.
It certainly helped me. So I'm grateful
Me
to
too.
you, and I
That's
hope
two
that our
people.
all right. Yes,
Okay.
we doubled our sample. All right, this is perfect. So I'm grateful to you, and I'm so happy to have just this chance to visit. And I'm hoping that we'll have chances to connect in other ways in the near future.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.